Speed and velocity are not things we've been known for in the Cardano community. However, when you spend years building the pound for pound strongest and baddest ecosystem in crypto, and then you turn it loose, then it becomes a matter of sitting back and watching a buildup of unstoppable momentum, the likes of which crypto has never seen before. I would wager that most of those in the path of the boulder never realize what's above them until the very moment it breaks free and starts rolling. Ready? Let's go. Today, we're going to discuss the wider crypto space being astonished at the velocity of Cardano's growth, the AGIX ERC20 converter going live, Sophiaverse.ai, a new headquarters plan for a Cardano project in Pavia, and an important detail on a potential airdrop. If you're feeling an intense impulse to try to push that boulder over, or if you're finding value in these videos, I'd love it if you would consider delegating to the Army of Spies stake pool, ticker AOS. Also, this will likely be the last video of the week. This is going to be a short week because I'll be traveling this week, making the big continent switch. There will also be a little bit of an intermediate stop so I can go through the various procedures to get on this other continent, and then I'll be traveling again early next week. So there will probably be a few missed videos early next week, but then we'll be back on schedule. The rest of the crypto space is now hearing the rumblings of the gigantic Cardano boulder above them, and it's bumping up against the programming they've received through years of anti-Cardano propaganda. Here's a great example. This is a post from the Watcher.guru account, which is a huge Twitter profile with almost 800,000 followers. They posted simply, just in, Cardano has added 100,000 wallets to its network in the past month. For anybody inside the Cardano ecosystem, this is fantastic news, but nothing shocking at all. And I scroll down to the first comment I can find from someone with a .eth name down here in the comments. Here's what I see. Cardano, a completely Pavlovian response. You ring the bell and the dog salivates. This person, their programming is such that they hear Cardano and they think Cardano bad. Another interesting example. This is a post from the Blockworks account, 300,000 followers, another big account. New Snoop Dogg and Clay Nation launch an NFT collection on the Cardano blockchain. This is how far behind us the mainstream crypto press is. They think this is new news to us. And of course, a bunch of Cardano people pointed out that this is pretty old news at this point. But if you scroll down in the comments, you found this. Snoop Dogg, my man, nothing wrong about Cardano, but I don't know how to say it nicely, so I'm going to keep it to myself. And then he goes on to shill this project he's into. It's some kind of bridge or something. This is interesting because you can see the programming right in the way he wrote this. He's expressing that there's something about Cardano, and he can't even say it nicely. What I think he really means is, hey, the programming is we're all supposed to have an aversion to Cardano. I can't come up with a reason why we're supposed to have that aversion. He puts it as, I don't know how to say it nicely, probably because there's no basis for it. He can't come up with an actual basis for why everyone's supposed to have an aversion to Cardano, but he knows the crowd, the flock, the rest of the sheep, they all have an aversion. He has an aversion. So he is trying to express to Snoop Dogg somehow, not really to Snoop Dogg, of course, but whoever's reading this, as if he's trying to express it to Snoop Dogg, that everyone in the flock is supposed, all the sheep are supposed to have an aversion to Cardano. No one can actually come up with a reason why we're supposed to have an aversion, but that's the party line. We're all supposed to have this aversion to Cardano. You should be aware of it. Fortunately, Juggernaut Cardano doesn't care about programmed group psychology. It's just going to continue on its way and crush everything in its path. Speaking of progress, today was the day that the AGIX ERC20 converter went live. We've talked about the ERC20 converter for a long, long time in Cardano. And I think this was important. I think it was important that we get the AGIX tokens bridged over to Cardano so they could be native tokens on the Cardano in the Cardano ecosystem. I think that's important because I think SingularityNet is an important project. I do think it's important we move towards a singularity that's beneficial for humans. I know that sounds like some crazy sci-fi stuff, but I think we're going to see some very powerful forms of AI in our lifetimes. How much that conforms to your personal definition of AGI, we'll see, but I think we're definitely going to see some very powerful forms of AI in our lifetime. And I think it's important that that transition, that that move into that new era where that exists is I think it's important that that era is one that's actually beneficial for humans, and it could be other things. Having said all that, I don't know if I think about the ERC20 converter the same way I did some time ago last year when we first started talking about this. Last year, it seemed like a great idea. Cardano will come along, fees will be much lower, and we'll still all these Ethereum projects. Why would they continue to build on Ethereum when they could come over and build on Cardano where the fee situation is much, much better? That made sense at the time. But when I look at how Cardano has developed since then, all these budding new projects, if you gave me a choice, hey, there's this great project over in the Ethereum world. Would you rather that project be ported over to Cardano so that you can use it within the Cardano ecosystem, or that Cardano just build its own version of that project? 100% of the time, if the two are going to end up being, pretty comparable, 100% of the time I'm going to choose the homegrown Cardano version. And when I think about what kinds of projects exist in Ethereum that I'm dying to use, given what we're already building in the Cardano ecosystem, it's kind of hard for me to come up with anything that exists over in Ethereum that I'm like dying to use, that I wish existed in Cardano that doesn't. I think people are building out a lot of the interesting use cases that already exist over in the Ethereum world. And more importantly, I think the killer use case for Cardano is not going to be anything we bridge over from the Ethereum world. I think the killer use case in Cardano, as far as ones that don't already exist yet, the killer use case in Cardano is going to be something that doesn't exist right now. I think it's going to be something we build that can only exist by virtue of the EUTXO architecture. I don't think it's going to be something we convert over from the account balance world. I don't think that's going to be the big, innovative, giant project. I think the big, innovative, giant project that gets us all really excited is going to be something brand new we haven't even figured out yet that's only possible because of EUTXO architecture. Like I said, I'm really glad we have the ERC20 converter, and I'm really glad that SingularityNet is coming over to Cardano. But I think the really big dApps in the future of Cardano are going to be new things. Continuing our discussion of new things, there was this AMA with Ben Goertzel of SingularityNet, and he talked about some of the things we've just been discussing, like a beneficial singularity, one that's beneficial for humans. But he also talked about Sophiaverse. What is Sophiaverse? To me, Sophiaverse is part of the answer to the question, is an AI like Sophia better embodied in robotics or in a digital avatar? If you think about Sophia and people's general reaction to Sophia when they see one of those mainstream media interviews with her, there's definitely a bit of the uncanny valley thing. She looks a little too close to human, but still far enough away that there's a little bit of that revulsion. And I think they do a good job of not trying to make her look overly human so that they don't like emphasize the uncanny valley thing. But there's still a little bit of that. People are a little weirded out because they know she's not a human, but the robot looks a bit like a human. It doesn't have the hair, but it looks close enough to a human. It's a little freaky. People get a little freaked out, not necessarily us crypto types who are constantly thinking about technology and this kind of stuff. I think we're just excited at the prospect of AI embodied in robots. But I think the mainstream, I think a lot of people are a little freaked out when they see something like this. It's different if we're talking about embodying an AI in a digital avatar in a metaverse. And apparently that's part of what Sophiaverse is going to be. It's going to be, in Ben Goertzel's words, the coolest metaverse, a very cool metaverse. And I think that's no exaggeration, because he's talking about having AI characters embodied in avatars in this virtual world, in this metaverse project. And they'll be interacting with the normal humans who are also embodied in avatars, of course, in this metaverse project. And he said something like the AIs will be, interacting with the humans and teaching the humans and also learning from the humans. I think this is important because with that phrase, he sort of summed up what I think happens in a metaverse. When I go into Decentraland, where I have a meeting about once a week, I go into unrelated to this channel. It's a meeting unrelated to this channel, but I go in there and the people I'm meeting with, we're kind of interacting with each other. And, of course, we end up talking about crypto stuff as part of this meeting. And we're basically interacting, learning from each other, and teaching each other things. I think that's the essence of what happens in these kinds of virtual worlds. Sure, there's stuff that's done probably purely for entertainment as well, but a lot of it is exactly what Ben Goertzel described. And isn't this the best possible place to interact with AIs? We can't all sit down with Sophia like they do in these mainstream media appearances, or like at the Cardano summit when she was up on stage with Charles. We can't all do that. And also, if we're doing it in the metaverse, if you happen upon some avatar in this Sophiaverse, if they wanted to, it could almost be endless Turing tests, because when you see Sophia, on stage on some talk show or something, it's the Sophia AI bot, right? But in the metaverse, if you see an avatar, you're not instantly going to know that that's the Sophia AI robotic embodiment. You're just going to think it's an avatar. And only by actually interacting with it will you attempt to figure out if that's an AI avatar or a human avatar. I'm sure that's going to be controlled in the Sophiaverse. I'm sure there will be, intentionally some kind of distinction so you can tell which are bots and which are other human characters. Or maybe they'll intentionally tell you, like, hey, in these contexts, you might not know whether an avatar is a human or an AI. I have no idea how that's going to work out, but I'm sure they'll be very deliberate about those kind of choices. But it's kind of interesting because we can have an interaction with these AIs in Sophiaverse that we can't really have due to the current limitations of robotics in real life. If we were to be walking down the street and suddenly we walked past a chair the Sophia robot was sitting on, upon close inspection, we would figure out it's the Sophia robot or some kind of robot, at this point. I'm sure that'll change rapidly in the future, but in the metaverse, all those distinctions are gone because we're going to be digital and she's going to be digital. At the hazard of taking this in the direction of Bostrom's simulation theory discussion, I think it's also interesting that it's very, very easy to have almost unlimited instantiations of an AI inside the metaverse. Like, it's a little bit more difficult to have 10,000 Sophia, AIs embodied in robots produced by, who is it, Hanson Robotics, I think, made that robot. That's pretty difficult and costly to do. Very, very easy to have 10,000 instantiations of Sophia AI in the metaverse. As we know, having that greatly multiplied number of instantiations in the metaverse will also impact how many interactions over X period of time she's having with us, which will also impact how quickly she's learning from us. Back to normal Cardano news, Paribus is announcing we are thrilled that Paribus will be entering the Pavia IO metaverse. We have purchased plots and will build a headquarters on site. The possibilities of metaverse opportunities are endless. We are excited for future developments. I always kind of thought that the metaverse project in Cardano that would have the most adoption from other projects, like other projects wanting to build stuff within that virtual world, would be one where the avatars can be normal humans. I think there's also a place for these metaverse projects where you have to be like X animal. It's like all the avatars have to be, the blank animal version of you. They can't really just be a normal reflection of the normal you. I think there's a place for these other projects where there's this big role playing element where it's like, okay, I like to hang out in this virtual world because we're all like, sparrows. We're all some type of small bird or something, or, we're all squirrels or whatever it is. I think there's a place for that. And a lot of people will enjoy that. But I always kind of felt like the one where other projects within the ecosystem would want to build sort of the metaverse, the metaverse location for their project. I always felt like it'd be a virtual world that was a closer reflection of the real world. It seems like Pavia kind of fits that bill right now. Who knows, in the future, someone else may take that mantle, but it seems like right now Pavia is the one that's sort of fitting that description. Finally, according to this post, it looks like April 19th, which for many of you will be the day you're listening to this video. April 19th will be the final day to complete the third required step for Indigo. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, that's probably because you did not follow along and didn't complete the first two steps, so don't worry about it. But for those of you who did, today is probably the last day to finish that final step, if today is April 19th. Be careful while I'm gone. Don't lobster trap yourselves in anything, and I'll talk to you next week.